The winter wind tore through Timber Hollow with a ferocity that could freeze a man's breath midair. Snow drifted like ash across the narrow main street, whispering against the shuttered windows of the few buildings still standing. After another hard season, deep in the pine forest that surrounded the town, a single axe struck in rhythm, slow, steady, certain. Each swing belonged to Eli Turner, a man carved from the very woody cut. The townsfolk called him the Lonely Lumberjack, a name that suited him as much as his flannel coat and calloused hands. He spoke little, smiled less, and lived alone in a cabin that even the bears respected. Eli's life had been measured in trees and silence. He'd once loved, or so people whispered. But the woman was gone, and with her went the color from his world. Work became his prayer. Pain became his company. But fate, like the mountain wind, has a way of circling back when least expected. That March, Timber Hollow faced hunger. A drought had ruined crops, and debts piled high. Desperation birthed a cruel idea. The sheriff announced a marriage auction, claiming the proceeds would help the town survive. Men with money could bid for women who had none, under the pretense of offering them a new life. Some called it charity. Others called it shame. Eli had no interest in such wickedness. He came to town only to trade lumber for flour and nails, maybe a pint of whiskey before returning to the hills. But that day, curiosity, or perhaps destiny, led him toward the gathering crowd outside the courthouse. The air smelled of sweat and sawdust, heavy with laughter that had no kindness in it. On a rough-built stage stood a line of women, heads bowed, some crying quietly. The auctioneer's voice sliced through the noise like a whip. "Next up," he shouted, slapping his ledger. A strange one came in from the north road with no papers, no name, and this here sack tied over her head. Says she won't speak till she's wed. Starting bid, $1. Mockery erupted. A sack-headed bride. One man barked. What's she hiding, horns? Another sneered. Yet the figure on stage didn't move. She stood small and still, her burlap veil stirring slightly in the cold breeze. Her hands were clasped before her like someone praying not to be seen. Eli should have walked away. He told himself so twice. But something in her stillness, something proud beneath the humiliation, pierced straight through the armor he'd built around his heart. The auctioneer's voice echoed again. $1, do I hear two? Silence. Boots shifted. Men looked at one another, smirking. Eli heard himself speak before he decided to. $2. Every head turned. The auctioneer blinked, then grinned wide. Sold. $2 to the quiet men in the back. Laughter rippled across the crowd, but Eli didn't flinch. He stepped forward, handed over the coins, and climbed the stage. The woman flinched as he reached for the rope binding her wrists. But his touch was gentle. "You're free now," he said quietly. "Come with me." They left together through the stunned crowd, walking side by side down the snowy street. No one followed, after all. What fool would pay money for a mystery covered in burlap? Yet the wind seemed softer as they climbed toward the forest, as though the mountains themselves approved. Eli's cabin stood miles away, hidden among evergreens and quiet streams. Smoke still rose from the chimney where he'd left his morning fire. Inside, he gestured toward a chair by the hearth. "Sit," he said, setting down his axe. She obeyed without a word. The firelight flickered across her sack-covered face, revealing only the outline of delicate features beneath the rough cloth. He poured her hot water with honey, the best he had. She took it carefully, hands trembling. After a long silence, he spoke again. "You can take that off, if you like. No one here but me." She shook her head. "Not yet," she whispered. Her voice was soft, cracked, unsure. "When I speak my name, it must be to my husband." Eli's chest tightened. "Then I guess we'll wait." Days became weeks. She helped with the chores, quiet as snowfall. She cleaned the cabin, cooked what little food they had, mended his torn shirts with neat, practiced stitches. though her face remained hidden. Eli saw her kindness in the smallest gestures. The way she set his cup just where he liked it. The way she hummed softly while sweeping. The way she always left his chair closest to the fire. He never asked questions. He simply worked, chopping wood by day, repairing fences, hunting small game. Yet every night, he'd catch himself glancing toward her while she sat by the fire. That burlap veil glowing orange in the light. Who was she? Why hide? And why did her presence, silent though it was, make the cabin feel less empty? One evening, during a storm that shook the roof, she startled awake from a nightmare, crying out beneath the sack. Eli rose from his bedroll and knelt beside her. "You're safe," he murmured. "No one will hurt you here." She clutched his arm with surprising strength. "They would have killed me," she breathed. "They said I was cursed. That I brought ruin." Her words dissolved into sobs. Eli didn't press for details. He simply stayed there until her shaking stopped. After that night, a quiet bond formed, something fragile but alive. They spoke more. She asked about the forest, about the life of a lumberjack. He told her of the wolves he'd seen. Of the sunrise over the ridgeline. Of the peace that came when the trees listened. Sometimes she laughed, a sound so pure it startled him. Other times, when she thought he wasn't looking, she'd touch her covered face as if tracing scars beneath. Spring crept back to Timber Hollow. The snow melted into rivers that rushed through the valleys. One morning, sunlight spilled across the cabin floor, turning the dust into gold. The woman stood by the door, watching it with wonder. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Eli smiled faintly. "It always was. You just needed to see it." That afternoon, he came in from chopping wood and found her waiting by the fire, hands folded. Something in the air felt different, still, expectant. "Eli," she said softly. "Do you believe people can start again?" He set the axe aside. "If the ground's good and the seed's strong, anything can grow again." She nodded slowly, then reached for the knot at the back of the sack. "Then maybe it's time." He froze. The fabric rustled as she untied it. But before it slipped away completely, she paused. "When I say my name," she whispered, "everything changes." Eli's heart pounded, though he didn't know why. "Then say it," he murmured. The sack fell to the floor. The fire roared, shadows dancing wildly across the walls. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she met his eyes and spoke her name, a name he hadn't heard in years. One that struck him like a hammer to the chest. Eli staggered back, stunned. The world seemed to tilt. He had thought her lost forever. Buried in memory and grief, yet here she was. Standing before him, fragile and real. She began to cry, words tumbling through tears, of betrayal. Escape, fear, and the long road that led her back to him. He listened in silence, his rough hands trembling. When she finished, the forest outside had gone utterly still, as if listening too. Eli stepped closer, cupped her face, and whispered. "Then we start over, from this moment." And under the whispering pines, the lonely lumberjack took her hand. Not as a man who bought a stranger for $2, but as one who had been given a miracle he never asked for. That spring, Timber Hollow learned that even the coldest hearts can thaw. Travelers who passed through spoke of laughter coming from the cabin in the woods. Of two voices singing softly by the river. Some said it was the sound of redemption. Others swore it was love reborn. Whatever it was. It began with a man, a sack, and $2, and ended with a name that healed everything it touched.